So I'm with Pat.
Nice to meet
Pat.
you.
Yep, you too. So, could you start by naming the pub we're in
Certainly.
and telling me how long you've been here and how you came about running this pub?
Right. Well, we've been here, I say we, since 1984. In fact, myself and my brother, who was basically instrumental in us getting the pub, were involved with the previous owners for 10 years prior to that. So, unfortunately, my brother passed away tragically last year, coming up for the 22nd of August, and that was my brother, Mike, and he was 3 years younger than me. He was in advertising. He was with Saatchi & Saatchi as a creative director, the director of the firm, and it was his input that really drove us to get the pub. I DJ'd here prior to that for 10 years with the previous owners.
In that little booth?
In the booth, yes, that you're probably going to show later.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Mike worked behind the bar. We came in with our two partners, who subsequently, through pub life, didn't end up being with us, which is one of the thoughts of having a pub. Unfortunately, as I say, my brother passed last year, which was still all the people here are still shocked.
Was there any sign it was shot? So it was out. It was
Completely
unexpected.
out of the blue. He'd run the London Marathon 5 times. He was quite versatile in the karate field, and he was fit. He was 6'5", so he was quite imposing. But he was a real gentle giant. He was also former chairman of the Creative Circle, which is the advertising charity body for the Advertising Society. He also spoke at Oxford and I believe Cambridge University, and he was very much a giving guy, and his DNA is all around this pub. At his funeral at St George's Cathedral at the Elephant, there was over 1,000 people. That was people in the advertising world, people that knew him in the pub, and also his beloved football team, which happened to be Millwall. So there was lots and lots of people who, I have friends of mine that still come in here now, who are scaffolders, and they're really upset. They're almost in tears. They find it very hard to come here because he was such a major part of our life.
It sounds like he bridged the class systems.
He did.
Yeah.
I don't think you could put it any better than that, Vinny. That he could talk to kings and paupers alike. He made everyone feel special, whether they were having a Coke or a large gin and tonic. He always found, he was like a Peter Ustinov. He was a raconteur. He always had a funny, and it was never at the cost of anyone. So that is still resonates around here, and I've tried to carry on with his friends, his legacy here. And Trisha is my other half, who works in the kitchen. Unfortunately, she's just gone down with pneumonia, so I'm sort of going between the two. As far as the pub is concerned, we were extremely busy we built it up, but extremely busy in the late 80s and 90s. And we've seen an incredible change in this whole locale. There's lots of hipsters now.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to ask something similar shortly. Carry on, please. Yeah.
But what's happened is a lot of our friends took the chance of going, using their rent books to buy properties at a reduced price in Southwark, and then eventually selling on. These people have moved in. The whole area around here, our trade was very much our lunchtime trade. We used to have something like 2 sit-ins. You had to phone to book up to come to the pub. And that has completely changed. We now have some groups of Airbnb, which we don't unfortunately, we can't Airbnb them on the premises, but we get groups in the morning, sometimes lunchtime. Recently we've been getting a lot of Americans, we get a lot of Canadians, we've been getting Nordic, Sweden, and lots of Germans, an awful lot of Germans recently. And then they suddenly want lunches sort of in the morning, sort of 11 o'clock. sometimes at 4 o'clock, depending on when they arrive here. We seem to be like the corner where people get picked up by the people that are doing the Airbnbs. So our trade now, I'm having to do food of an evening, which we would never have contemplated years ago. I mean, the tables that you see here in the stalls, they used to go out every day, and they used to go and go in every afternoon because the pub was so busy.
Yeah.
That is so different now. We have late hours. I think an awful lot is to do now with obviously the cost. I mean, we're hearing around the Borough Market 7, 8, in some places £9 for a pint. Absolutely crazy. And we're with Stonegate, and we're finding that there are pubs around here that are on their managed side, and unfortunately we have to fight with the fact of what they can sell their beer at and what we can. But I think we're trying to make a good fist of it, you know.
Well, this place is first class, but would you agree that genuine publicans are bullied today by the status quo, if you like?
I think so, but I also think that when we came in it, when me and Mike came in it, and I used to go to the LVA so it used to be once every Wednesday, every first Wednesday of the month or last Wednesday, I found that most of the publicans I found were really angry then, and they were the last of the good years, and I thought, oh God, I never want to get like that, to be so...
But do you blame them? Do you not think they were robbed?
No, I'm frightened now. I would hope that I don't come over as one of those people.
But how can you not?
I think one of the things that I think has always kept us in good stead is never saw the money going in the till as ours. It's quite strange. You think of HMRC and you think, fair enough, we've just put it. And I think as long as people were having a good time, I think our ethos, me and Mike's ethos, was we always wanted to do things that as customers we would want to see in a pub. So we never went down the route of post mix or the guns and that. We always had bottles of soda. We used to have spray soda, so the soda siphons. We were one of the last pubs to ever use them, and they used to be free on the bar. Unfortunately, the general climate now dictates that we can't afford to do these things free, so they are in bottles. But we've tried to be as true as we can over the years, so it you know, it has had an effect, and I think the fact is people do come back, and it's fortunate. You know, I mean, we were given the accolade of one of the top 50 pubs in Time Out in London, and for the next couple of days we were really quiet, which we thought was really funny. So it's
I've noticed as well these old-fashioned tills.
Yes.
So when we paid for a drink, we used card.
Yeah.
And I made the comment, you must not like that as much, and you said no. So that you obviously enjoy the authentic feel of cash. Now, something that I say often is, whether it's a pub, a gymnasium, or wherever you are, if you go in and you're not able to hand cash over the till, it's already impersonal. It's already a place that feels like it's a corporation, or part of a corporation. So if you had your way, would it still all be cash?
Yes, I think so, because I think you get the young guys now, and probably girls as well. I mean, when they go in, they just tap something. They don't have an idea what they're paying. And I think that when I used to go out when I was very young, when I started my drinking life, my social life, we'd go out with £2 or £3. You knew how many drinks. I mean, a whiskey and American ginger would be 2 and 6. That would be for the spirit and the mixer. And you would go home and go, God, I spent so and so. But when people tap,
it's very impersonal.
It's very impersonal, and sometimes I'm hearing stories where what happens is that some of the staff in the places don't even really look at the customer. So there's no real engagement. And I think that is, once again, it takes away that, I don't want to say pub experience, I think that...
Well, it does. I mean, I'm old and young enough to remember standing at the bar, the code was you held your note out.
Yeah.
And that means I'm in the queue.
Yes.
So already that's gone,
Yes.
isn't it?
I think when they say, I always think I'm a great believer of this. I'm not part of it, but I would be all for it. That to make sure that cash does not die. So there is a group out there that are acting on, because remember on that note it says I promise to pay the bearer, and I really do think, I don't know where it stands, but me and my brother were having a long conversation about, surely when you go into any place and they refuse to take, you say no, by rights you should take
Of course, yeah,
because that is the currency of the realm.
Yeah.
And I'm very old fashioned, you know what I mean, and so consequently I realise things are changing, and not all for the best. Yeah. But we see that in all parts of our society. So I still strive, and I just say to people, if we have parties or anything like that, I say, when you're coming along, is it possible to bring cash? Because if you suddenly come up and you put something behind the bar and you're Robert and there's another Robert and there's 4 other Roberts and whatever, you're forever, people are trying to get served, whereas I serve both of you, you have 2 pints of Stella, it's £13.20. You walk away, you've got the drink. But if you go, oh, mine's Rob Davis, I'm up on there, I've got the so-and-so card, I've got the, people sometimes mix up the cards, you pay the wrong thing, it's, I'm not, I think, and it's so hard when you've got a party on, and so we do say to people, and they go, oh, I didn't think you would. A lot of people feel they're almost being forced into not using cash.
Well, it's the cost of coffee mentality, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the corporation mentality, and it's that Star Trek sort of vibe, that Fifth Element sort of vibe, if you like. As I said, it's incredibly impersonal. Whereas when you come in somewhere like this, it's got a lovely wooden bar. It's also an excuse to talk to the barman or the barmaid. It breaks the ice. And when you come in and treat the pub the same as when you're in the coffee shop, that's what eventually it becomes.
Yeah.
I would love to see cash continue its use, but if you look down the road, which I don't need to tell you, you've got all of these, as you said, yuppie establishments coming up, and they're all card only. Now, I won't name them, but I can think of a list of pubs that have now gone card only.
Yeah. Right.
And some of them are the sort of pubs where it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of one right now. I won't name it, but it's on Rappel Street. I know it. And now it's card only. So
Is that really?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So you think, oh, what a beautiful street, what a lovely Lambeth estate. You feel like you're stepping back in time.
Yeah.
And you go in and you've got to get your Barclay card out.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that when during COVID, when COVID ceased, we didn't carry on with serving people at the door and that. We waited till we could help out to eat out. We could do it properly so people could come in the premises. But I went up to the local Barclays up on Tabridge Road, which has since closed, and I was queuing up, and they call themselves, they're not a manager, they're like a chief clerk. She's a lovely girl. She said to me, Pat, you don't have to stand here. You can go to this. And I said, no, I've got cash. I want to pay the cash in, and I want to see that the cash is going.
Yes, right, yeah.
And she said, you shouldn't have been taking cash. She said,
yeah.
And I said, well, hang on a minute, you're a bank.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm surprised during COVID. I was doing it at the right time, so I wasn't taking money when we were closed or anything. And I said, and the only reason why I wanted to go to a cashier and have it counted is because I happened to experience pre-COVID, when they put all these machines in where you can put all the different things through, everyone was queuing up and to go to the cashiers, right? And this cashier was trying to cajole people to use the machines, and she got hold of a Bermondsey guy who said, no way, I put some money in and it never registered. I had a terrible job. So people that were going to join it all of a sudden came back to the and they were like almost pulling their hair out because they couldn't believe they couldn't get anyone to use the machines. And I don't trust it. I've heard all sorts of stories.
What strikes me is you've got a bank worker
Yeah.
telling you
Yeah.
And they're not in the government, but they're telling you what you shouldn't be taking cash.
But I've even said, you realise, the same as when I go to Asda or Tesco's, that when the more you go onto those machines, I said that now you realise that's costing you your job, because it's taking the place of the human contact, and there, you know, it's the big corporate thing, isn't it? It's about get people in, get people out, and that's it.
Well, that leads me on to something that your pub clearly isn't guilty of, the gastro environment, where they don't want you to sit down per se, they want you to sit at a table, eat and bugger off.
Totally agree.
They want a chain coming in and out. They do not want someone enjoying themselves for a few days.
I totally agree. That was me and my brother's big gripe, was that you go in some place, they say, well, do you want to take a seat? It's almost very continental. It's
like at a Chinese restaurant or something.
Yeah, it's trying to get that extra out of you. And I have to say, my brother used to laugh, but my biggest angst was years and years ago, when these places started to having managers in, and I'm not taking the Witherspoons of this, that, but other places, I would go in and you'd see a guy fairly corporate, when I say, or corpulent, I should say, not corporate, but very corporate as well. When you'd walk in, and they'd have a set of keys, my heart used to sink.
I know exactly what you're.
Straight away.
Yeah.
They're more about they're telling the staff, got this, got to do whatever, and you could be standing waiting there, and they're not even
acknowledging you. Yeah.
So therefore, I used to think to myself that, you know.
You're talking about the chain pubs where they've got sachets around their neck, and they're at work.
Yeah.
It's not their life.
We're a unit. They're a dispensing unit, and we're a consumer unit, and we're not a person. Get served, move on, and as I say, you used to rattle the keys, and you see them walk out, and they were obviously, I don't know about being bludgeoning it, or I'll give you an example about how these things. I had a lovely rep come in, a beautiful looking girl come in. She obviously came with her boss, and they came in at lunchtime, and she said, oh, what a lovely pub. Anyway, now I've had to deal with salespeople for 40 odd years, so sometimes in the early years you'd get caught or whatever, but anyway, she's here, and she said, how have things been? I went, the last couple of days have been absolutely awful. I said, oh dear. She went, oh, that's good. And then so she obviously was nervous her boss was there.
Yeah.
But it was obviously, there's a script.
Yeah.
You follow the script, and you're not really taking a, you know, you just said, oh, my
these people
was
are at
killed
work.
in a car crash and that.
It's not their life. So something that we discuss often is a good sign of a good pub, and it's not always the case, because they could still have what I'm about to say and it's a bad pub, but when you walk in a pub and there are stalls at the bar for a start,
Yes.
it means there's more likelihood of it being a social environment between the bar backs, the barman, the bar ladies and the punter.
Yeah.
As soon as there's no seats, then immediately you know they don't want you loitering at the bar.
Yeah.
Which is very impersonal, which goes back to that gastro discussion we was having.
Yes.
And before I ask you about this layout, do you think, and obviously you don't want to make any enemies, but do you think some of the pubs in the local area have lost their charm?
Yeah, definitely. I can. My aunt, we come from a military family, but my aunt owned the Woolpack in Bermondsey Street for 20 odd years in the 70s. And she was a really, really good, knowledgeable person. And she actually used to say, she would never bar anyone, but she would say to people, if she didn't want to back, she'd say, I don't want you to come in here again. And often, there's a bar across the road now called Garrison. It was called something else a number of years ago. Probably our family couldn't have gone in there because we could have got duffed up, because all the people that drank, that had stopped drinking in my aunt's pub, well, I say there wasn't a lot, but the people, they could be probably found in across the road. And then now it's quite interesting that the Garrison is very much corporate, and it's more like a restaurant diner than a pub at all. Mm-hmm. And the same with the Woolpack. I believe that's owned by Young's now.
So you agree that the word pub has been bastardised?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, if you give an example, I think of Witherspoons. It's a very clever operation. To me, I think a Witherspoons is like the same as a McDonald's. If you go to Newcastle and go to Witherspoons, you'll
Even
get
Scotland,
whatever. And then you'll go down to Truro and there's a Witherspoons. And you could be, it doesn't matter where, you know, it's a concept, it's very cleverly done, toilets are clean, you cannot beat their pricing, and the fact they will have, say, a gin exhibition or whatever, they're bringing ciders or they're bringing, and you can't compete with that. So it's very cleverly done, to Tim Martin, you have to take it out, but from the point of view of it being impersonal, yes, I think number on the table.
Oh, when you walk in there, there'll be, you know, some young people that have just maybe they're in school and they're doing it for work. But as I was sort of implying elsewhere, some pubs you go in and that same girl who might be the same age in a Wetherspoons pub might be someone's daughter in a different pub that owns the pub. So she has pride in it.
Cool.
She pulls good pints,
yes.
She talks to people. Whereas when you go into a Wetherspoons or some chains I won't name, like I said, they've all got sachets around their neck and they might as well be working in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
They do not have any love
Yeah.
for the cultural significance
Yeah.
of the public house.
Totally agree.
They might as well just be in a cafe. And even then the cafes aren't what they used to be.
No.
So when you walk in a public house now, I mean, do you feel that the generation that made the public house special, like Jason in the Shakespeare's Head, that generation, that when it does go, that there is no hope?
I think, unfortunately, I think it's right. We had an era of our important thing when we were young was to get in a pub. So when you were 16, 17, say, you went with a friend who looked like they could shave, or there was some bum fluff there. You made sure you got to the bar, and you were happy just to get ensconced in a corner and feel there was a minor victory that you managed to get a drink. And I think what happened was when the drugs and the e-culture came along, you had an age.
The clubbing culture.
Yeah, you had an age of young people that didn't see it as being cool or in any way to go for a drink. They were more interested, they would just hit the water and have the ease, go out into the countryside, and then they'd fix up some speakers and whatever. So there is a whole strata of what was the youth then, who've never drunk.
But back then, they never thought that we'd be in the world. They thought, oh, we're just enjoying ourselves. They didn't know they were killing pubs.
That's right, that's right. We were all suddenly, it was almost like we all had pipes. And you know, obviously we've had the smoking ban, we've had so many things. And then obviously people now that I find, you get a lot of younger people that when they do go out, they go out late, they stay out through the night, but they make sure they buy some spirits or whatever, or have some beers. You know, the guys have beers when they go out, the girls have tequila shots or whatever. So they're already buzzing when they go out. So you've already lost that part of trade in the early evening because, you know, passing the pub here at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning during the week, I've got groups of girls and guys, and they're going on somewhere. It's not just the weekend. Right. So
yeah, I mean, it's no longer the thing is, the safest time to do it was in the 80s and 90s. Now the climate's now not safe. But before we move on for it, if you don't want to answer, that's fine. You mentioned the smoking ban.
Yeah.
Now, I can speak on behalf of publicans that don't want to say it themselves, but I think it was a disgusting, selfish act that forced many elderly people out of even con clubs, private clubs, never mind pubs. Would you say, because in my opinion, it hurt far more people, because if you just made smoking and non-smoking pubs, the problem solved.
Yeah.
So for me, it was incredibly selfish that people will sit there and say, no, you can't have it either. Yeah. Do you dare answer the question whether you thought it was an awful decision or not?
I have to take into account that obviously, you know, when you've got cancer and you've got the big cigarette companies and tobacco companies, I think it was very cleverly done by the government. They did it in the summer because people go, I'll go outside and I'll smoke. They didn't have to brave the winter to start off with.
Yeah.
But also, I've had friends here who they've said they're having a drink and they go, I don't smoke, but I actually have to go out to have a chat with them because otherwise they won't really want to repeat the same conversation when they come back, and that would be, say, in the winter and things like that. So I've got mixed views on it, but I think we saw a third of our trade go.
Well, how many publicans are still waiting for the trade that the government said you're going to get more trade? Well, where is it?
Yeah, but I think we all know how the government speaks.
I'm glad you say that because I'm being careful
on every aspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So before we forget, right now, the beautiful layout of the pub. The outside is stunning. The frontage.
Yeah.
The interior's lovely. You've obviously made an effort to maintain it.
Yes. I mean, I was always told when we bought the bar top, that 66 foot of hardwood bar top. And I've seen it work beautifully when we've had it varnished. I stayed up one night when two French polishers worked on it years ago in the early 90s, and it was to see two really top class professionals to work and enjoy working on a material, the wood that they loved, they cherished. It was fantastic to watch. And I said, look, I want to stay up. And I don't mind whatever you have to drink. And they said, no, we brought our own kettle. There were two older guys, and I just watched them colour the bar top the way we wanted it.
You was observing a historic dying trade. It's a bit like a thatched roofer.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now we get all sorts of beer clubs that come here, and the first thing they know is the dashboard. And then all the wood here, because in the early 90s, all these sort of places were then they were not interested in people saying, oh, you need to get mirrors to cover up the wood. And I have to say, I was upstairs looking outside one afternoon, and two guys came past, and they were quite clipped. I think they were either estate agents, whatever. Young guys. They had clegs on their shoes. There was clip clop. I looked out, and the doors were open to the pub. And as one of them looked, he said, "Oh, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, that's one of those small Witherspoons pubs. It's got lots of wood." And I thought,
wow,
Jesus,
wow,
really, is that?
Wow.
So that's what someone perceived. They were young guys, young professionals, walked past, and they were just obviously
in the 90s, you say.
No, I would have thought this was in the I would have thought late 90s, maybe early 2000s. But it just shows you how things were perceived about having proper wood
decor.
In a pub. And I think now what's happened is things are going full circle. People are going, oh God, you've done this. I go, no, we've looked after it.
Do you know what makes me laugh? What's happening in many pubs is they're being destroyed, and then, like you say, because it comes back into fashion almost, they have to now recreate it from scratch. Whereas if you just left it alone.
Sorry, mate, have you got any Rizzlers?
No, mate. Sorry. No, thank you. No. Well, so whereas if you'd have left the pub alone,
yes, it
would have been fine.
Yes.
But you've actually destroyed it, and now it's inauthentic.
Well, I'll tell you this, Vinny. When we kept getting refused a late licence for years and years and years, and one of the reasons they said about the area, and our district manager for Truman's at the time actually said, would we like to get the bar cut back so that you wouldn't have the horseshoe. It would end where we call that the island. You would only be able to walk up to one part and then walk up to the other. They were going to cut that bar off. And I said, even then, I'd like to think that I had a view to history, and I said, no, you can't do that.
No.
I mean, that bar's been like that for years.
But that's also your decision, not theirs.
Yeah. But luckily, we weren't swayed, and we stuck with it. Otherwise, you would now have had a great big area that would be missing.
How many men or women do you think have given in to this peer pressure?
I think loads. I think
Because
absolutely loads.
when I was growing up, you know, there was still this perception of the landlord. That's what he says. If he wants you out, he doesn't have to explain himself.
No, exactly. Yeah.
If he wants to do something, that's tough shit. Whereas now there's this perception of you're following a government guideline. If you ban someone without explaining it, they can accuse you of prejudice.
Yes.
When in reality, what suits any public house is the decision of the publican that runs that public house.
Yes.
And do you feel that most publicans now, they are just becoming part of the corporate regime?
I totally agree. I mean, my old stock taker, Ted Richardson, was a wily old cat. It would remind us of a bit of like a rumpole at the Bailey. He was a very curmudgeon little guy. But he said, Pat, always remember, the public are a queer animal, a strange animal. He said, when they come through the door, they could have experienced euphoria or the worst sort of thing. So be aware, they're coming into your almost like living room. But you have to always be polite and whatever, but be aware that even before they have a drink, that they might have experienced something terrible, and that drink could set them off or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's set me in good stead, really. You know, and touching wood, we've been extremely fortunate over the years.
It's a mindset
to have had such good people, especially in Bermondsey, which is a very, very tough area.
But I was going to say, I mean, as you was growing up, I'm sure you'll agree, owning a pub wasn't just owning a pub. It wasn't like owning an estate agent. You had to have something about you.
Yeah.
You know, I've had family and so on that have ran pubs or whatever, and they couldn't be weaker members of society, to put it politely.
Yeah.
And even if their wife or someone is working there, they have to be prepared for all eventualities.
That's
really.
correct, yeah.
And I think it was a major character building exercise for the publicans, for the people, and that's also gone.
Yeah.
And if I walk around now, these areas, I'm at a huge anticlimax. Pubs like this, very special. And you must take great pride in it, but you must almost feel a bit like the last, and I say this lovingly, you must feel like the last stretch of the dinosaurs.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, 42 years, I'm coming up for, in the next few weeks, coming up to my 70th birthday. 2 days.
You don't look a day under 40.
Thank you. 2 days prior to the anniversary of my brother, who would be, he would have been 67 in March. And I do think, you know, handing this pub on, unfortunately there's not family that we were hoping my nephew, Blaine, but he's doing other things. It would be, we feel like we're the custodian, and we would like to think that whoever comes in would at least continue in some form of that is similar. Obviously they're going to have ideas, they want to change things, but probably not change the actual main fabric and what makes the Vic special.
I suppose you dread the thought of someone coming in here, gutting it out.
Yeah.
Emotionally, as if it's a family affair.
Or making it a gastropub, which, because of Bermondsey SE1, lots and lots of people assume, because you've got a pub in SE1, that you're raking it in. And unfortunately, we're
maybe up the road, maybe up in Borough, yeah.
We're a side street pub. This was a main road, and so therefore people say, oh, this is the jewel in the Bermondsey crown. It's a hidden away gem.
I'd agree with that.
But it was never like that. And I think it's going to take some time before the kind of the borough experience, the borough, London Bridge, and I mean, I have to say, we gained through COVID, when people were allowed to go out for half an hour, whatever, they'd get on bikes, they started discovering us. I used to sit outside, and my girlfriend used to make me a cup of tea, and I'd sit outside And I used to say to people, when they come past, go, what a lovely pub. I have the door open and say, look, I can't serve you anything, but if you want to have view the pub, and lots of people became Vic stalwarts, the Victoria stalwarts, purely because when they said, when it does open out, we're going to come back. And I have to say, we've had a number of people have become regulars who probably would never ventured towards this part of the borough, because you've got the Old Kent Road, which is devoid of pubs really.
Oh, I'm not even going to. Yeah.
So therefore, all the nightclubs and things like that. So we've been very fortunate.
Well, I have seen some of your clientele are younger and hipper than I'd have expected.
Yes, I know. And people look on the site and they say, we've got to discuss. So we do get camera people that, when we were younger, I suppose, as a Bermondsey Publicans, me and my brother, it was all just very Bermondsey people. And you would have thought that a lot of the camera types would have been your old school master and with the leather patches and the tweeds and things like that. And I think now it's amazing how we've got Richard, who's an amateur historian. He knows so much about there, and he's always enlightening me about the Bricklayer's Arms, about the fact that the Duke of Wellington's body was brought up here after he died down in Walmer, and all the people of Bermondsey stood to attention of the vanquisher of Napoleon. Also Albert, who was going to marry Vicky, the Empress of the British Empire, came up, and when they found that Albert had come through Bermondsey, they were absolutely apoplectic. And we tell some of the Americans that Albert stopped off and had a drink in here.
Tourists don't know how prevalent the south of the river was for historic importance.
Yes.
I study it and so on, so I understand it, but the average tourist, they're going to go to the city, Buckingham Palace, place like that. Because we've kept you for quite a long time, so I've got a couple more questions, but one of the questions I want to ask is, you must also be familiar with the city pub scene.
Yeah.
And you've seen it die.
Yeah.
Do you feel a sense of loss there as well?
Yes, I do. I do.
Because we're all part of this city.
Yeah.
Just because you're from South or so on, the point is we travel around and we get to experience wherever we go. But wherever we go, it's becoming a Tesco environment, if you like.
Yeah.
And do you feel the same heartbreak that you do looking at the city or the surrounding areas of the city as you do here, or is this place mainly the place that hurts you the most?
I have to say I don't go in the city as much as I used to years ago.
Well, what excuse do we have anymore?
Exactly. Yeah. I totally. And when I do go and I see the places that were pubs, and it's all changed now, isn't it? Because the nightlife and whatever starts on a Thursday, doesn't it? It's not a Friday anymore because of the way COVID.
Well, it's empty now. There's no one in the offices.
Yeah.
It was empty before on a weekend, but now on sometimes a Thursday or even a Friday, it's like a ghost town. It's like someone out of that film 28 Days Later with the zombies.
Yeah.
Dead.
No, I agree. I don't know. It doesn't look good for the future, does it?
What I will ask towards, as we get towards the end, this place has been used on television a few times.
Yes.
Can you give me a couple of examples?
Ashes to Ashes, Life on Mars, Waking the Dead, Michael Winner's True Crimes, London's Burning, the Minder series with Shane Ritchie, which was a spin-off. We've had a number of World Cup ads. We've had music videos. We've had Damien Hirst's best friend Gavin Turk did an art installation here. So
who was the footballer? There was a Stella advert here.
It was Eric Cantona. But it wasn't ironically, it wasn't a Stella advert. I think it was for Ford, and he was walking up and down Pages Walk outside the pub.
With a pig or something?
No, he was with a billy goat. And he was walking as if the goat was a dog. It was tethered, and then he acted as a what do you call it? Like a troubadour on the corner, a busker, and he was, and people were going past, But this was the focal point. So he came in, and when he came in, I thought it'd be. I spoke to Mike Early. He said, "Pat, you've got to get him behind the bar serving a drink, because if he's on the other side, it could be any pub. If you get him behind the bar, they'll know it's the Vic."
Yeah.
And we had some real fun, because when he poured the pint, there was about 3/4 was foam, and he said, "Is that okay?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." So he's quite a character. He's still a very formidable character. I put my arm around him, and I still wouldn't want. You wouldn't want to be tackled by him. So I said, "Do you see that beer, Eric?" He went, "Yes." And it was real like Gaelic charm that he had. And I said, "That's £1,000." And he said, £1,000? For that? I said, "Do you know what?" I went, "No." And he looked at me quizzically, and I said, "Because Eric Cantona poured that pint." So he started to laugh. I got him with his hand to brush the glasses above the bar, the half-pint glasses.
I like that, by the way.
And he just said, "You want me to touch? They are empty." So I said, "Yes." And as he brushed them, I said, 500, £1,000. He said, "I like this game." And he was such a lovely. He was a very, very nice guy. He took the time, and he must be asked all the time. But I'm glad to say, it's funny watching the reactions of some people. I had one guy, obviously a Man United stalwart fan, came in, and you think he'd just seen a Turin in his shroud. He fell to his knees, and he just stared at the thing. And, as a Londoner, I thought it was quite funny.
That is funny,
That he said he was really here. I said yes.
As if he's not a real person, as if he lives on Mars or something.
And I said, I interviewed him, but he couldn't get the bar job here.
But you as a Londoner, if you're like myself, you've been walking around Oxford Circus, you've seen celebrities your whole life.
Yes.
You've run into Tottenham Court Road, you just see a celebrity.
Yeah.
So when Northerners and people come here, or even Americans, to them, that's crazy. But, you know, I wouldn't even start listing the people I've run into or seen. But that's the reality of living in London.
That's right.
And I bet you as a publican have probably seen an untold amount of interesting people.
We've had Gordon Jackson here. There was a group here on one of the filming occasions, and they were, I think it was either Life of Mars or Ashes to Ashes. And I have to be honest and say I hadn't seen any of the series. So there was one with a curly hair and a long or Mexican moustache, and he was here, a northern fella. I think he was playing one of the policemen or whatever. Then there was another guy, and they were sheltering from the rain. And then this beautiful girl came in, and she was sitting near them. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And she just stared at me, and they started to laugh.
I dread to think.
And she said, I'm a makeup artist." And I said, "Looking like that, you should be on the side of the other side of the camera." And one of the guys said,
"Yeah, I
you
see.
don't watch the series, do you?"
Yeah.
And it was Keely Hawes. And just after that, she became massive in America. I didn't even know who she was, but she's very natural. And
on the TV front, do you feel, and I say this about, say for instance, once again I mentioned Rappel Street, there's a lot of films and series filmed there, and I think quite obviously it's because it's one of the few places that still look like London because of modernity.
Of course.
So would you say that your pub, like some other pubs that have been used heavily as opposed to others, it's because it still looks like it's in England?
I think you're right. I mean, funny enough, there's one person I hadn't said that. I was here one Friday night, and I was talking to a friend of mine who happened to be a big Man United fan, but he was his name's Mark Shearer, and he was from Newcastle, so it was really strange or just outside Newcastle, being a Man United fan. And all of a sudden I was chatting to my brother. He used to phone on a Friday evening before coming home saying, "How's it looking?" And one of the girls came to me and said, "Pat, you need to come out." And he said, "Well, are you all right?" I looked round, and Oasis were in here.
Oh, well.
And I walked back, and I can't remember which one said, there was a press secretary with one, and they've been recording around here. And my friend turned around and said, "Well, this is one of the owners." He went, "All right." He went, It's all right, this gaff." And I went, "It's not a gaff.
There you go,
it's
approved by Oasis. There you go.
It's a pub." It's a pub. And he went, and he was, and
He took it well, did he?
Earlier,
Yeah.
When he went, oh, the punter. I said, it's not punter, they're customers. When you have a punter's taking a punt on a place. I said, if you get to the Vic, it's a guarantee. And I liken a little bit to the fact that people, when they say it in the nicest way, they say about punter is one thing. These are my go-to negative words. Boozer, which I know now, people say, oh, do you know what, this is quintessentially a lovely old boozer. When we were growing up, now I'm coming up for 70, when someone said about a boozer, it was like, it was a place that was...
run down.
Yeah, it was run down, and you had the old soaps in there and the red noses and whatever. And equally, and we know someone who's got a bar in Bermondsey, the Bermondsey Mile. But let's be honest, if you were told that one of your friends was drinking cider in a plastic under the arches, you go, he's on Skid Row.
Yeah.
Now the hipsters go there.
Yeah.
And now they're celebrating the arches, which rail track and the people that own all the can't believe their luck that all these places that were so empty before being done up, and they're even used as cheese emporiums.
Well, it's like the council estate pubs. How many, like at Rollo and Doddington, those three pubs have now become hipster pubs.
Right.
And they feel like they're cool,
Yeah.
travelling in from wealthy areas to the places that once were stigmatised.
Well, you would. That's right. Bermondsey would. All my friends said, "God, we should have bought property." Warehouses. Going. One guy who was a multi-millionaire who was living in a schoolhouse bought one of the warehouses near Mill Street for 50,000, and he sold it for 50,000, and he thought he made incredible money, and it was right on the docks, so it was, what was formerly the docks, looking out on the Thames. And the next thing he heard was one little corner was sold for so many million because it looked at the Thames, and he, as he said, it's the way it is. I made some money, someone else made, and then after that it just spiraled out of control. So friends of mine, we've often laughed that how did none of us think that this was one of the last places to
Who would have predicted
That's right.
this climate we're in now?
I know.
One thing I've seen in your pub that I've not seen anywhere else is you've actually covered the entrance to the men's. So if you're a little bit intoxicated, when you push or you use your forearm or bash your forehead, dare I say, I quite like that touch, the green,
padded,
the green padding.
Padded cell.
Yeah.
And he was the person that really, I think we all have to be grateful that that if it was not for him, that a lot of this, we would not be talking now about such a lovely pub.
And the pub wouldn't have been in all the films or...
That's right. It was, and I just see it as his legacy that we just want to carry on and make people have a good time here.
If we had more publicans like yourself, we'd be in a much better position, but I think the problem is when we meet publicans like yourself, it only breaks our heart as to how few we have.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, but I also think that however lovely this pub is, it's still quite a large room, and it needs the different diverse types of people that come in that talk about their experience in life, and that's what pubs are all about. If you think of the history that's gone through here, the different characters from pre-Victorian, Edwardian, whatever, all, if you see some of the old pictures we've got of the pub and the characters, and there must have been fantastic characters, that are intrinsically still the fabric of this pub. What's important to realise, if you have a look, is the person in the white on the left-hand side, the drivers often wore white coats, and that's a charabanc behind. They never called them coaches. They took their own entertainment, so they'd take a squeeze box or whatever. And if you look at the other ones, and that is the Red Cow, 1936, if you have a look on the other side, and they were going to Hastings, right? And what was told to us was they used to, they'd shout, the children would chase after the charabancs, and they used to shout, "Throw out your mouldies," and they would take out loose change. But our two main pictures is the Victoria here, and if you look, you can see our good friends the Germans, what they did, the cottages that were next door, that's the railway cottages, they were bombed. So
what, here?
Think that, we think that was around about the 1930s, maybe early 30s, mid 30s.
He's got a fascinating hat on there.
But the other thing is, if you look at the two women to the front, that's a mother and daughter. And the mother, she went up and got changed and came down. And they all said, I can't remember what her name was, but if it was Beryl or Mildred, they go, "What are you doing, Mildred? We're all going to the coast. What are you doing sitting here?" And she said, "You're leaving my pub. If you're leaving my pub, then I'm going." And so the daughter went up and got changed and said, "Mum, if you're going, I'm going." And the poor publican was sitting next door. He kept his mouth shut. And so Women's Lib was alive and well in Bermondsey in the 30s.
They've always had more front than Brighton, ironically.
And here, that was...
This is a great one,
that shows you that ostensibly the Victoria was a railwayman's pub because of the fact that the Bricklays Arms was across the road. And so you just have to look at the characters on the front. And by the side we believe there was a timber yard here. But the front of the pub, which we've got the entrance near us here now, we've got double doors. Front of the pub was part of the living quarters. So we're probably sitting in where the living quarters were to the pub, you know. And that one there, is that obviously...
This one's interesting, it's all ladies.
Yeah, so they would all be going to... They would probably be either from the pickle factory across the road, and girls used to go on Beano's as well.
Yeah.
So we think that's either...
Well, one of their
60s
sons
or 70s.
is actually with them. One of their sons is actually where they couldn't get someone to look after them.
And the other thing, we have 1955, the year I was born. The Publican is there.
Wait, hang on, which one?
The Publican, I believe, is... Just one moment.
Go on.
The Publican is there.
This one here.
Yeah. And what happened was, we were told an awful lot of men, what they would do is they would have their suits in hock during the week. And at the weekend, Thursday or Friday, they would take them out. That's another one. That was a Publican at the Vic. He was a real tough character.
What, this one here?
Yeah. You would never mess with him. And that is not the Vic, but that's another. And we had the other picture blown up. That's the picture that you've just seen. And this shows you the kind of societies that... So 1961, the Victoria.
Oh, wow.
And...
Oh, this is first class, this is. Yeah.
And then you look
at
they
all their
obviously
hats,
provided their hats. And just see if there's any others.
And it looks very American, that shot, I must say.
Yeah. And then the people that my brother worked for before Johnny Rutledge, the people that won Pub of the Year, so where you've got Evening Standard Pub of the Year, that was John and June Sheriff. And that was an old boy that used to get half a bitter because he'd been here for years. And the judges for the Evening Standard Pub of the Year was Jimmy Edwards, the comedian who used to, you probably wouldn't know him, he was a comedian come trombonist, okay, and there was, I think, Anne Lloyd, or there was a female tennis champion that was also one of the judges for Evening Standard Pub, and that is the railway cottages looking from the pub. So this is before they were all done up.
It reminds me once again of Rupel Street. The similar.
Yeah. This is all a conservation area now, all the way down.
Well, they're beautiful down there, just down the road. Yeah. But these are nostalgic for someone like myself who wasn't alive to see it. For you, it must be, to see the vast changes that you've seen, it must be very confusing, to say the least.
Well, it's just around the other side, so that's But yeah, it's incredible. And those, that's Peckham Peculiar. You're welcome to have a look at that. They asked me at the end of the conversation, when I was chatting to them, they said we have to have a picture of you, and I didn't, and I look more like a bouncer than anything.
Yeah, you
else.
do. Yeah, I see a chat with Pat. Look, you look like a villain.
Yeah, I was trying to form part of how the area was, but yeah,
you've got to scare the yobs off, though, haven't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the editor and his wife, they're a young couple. They'd not long got married. They stopped off here and they loved the pub, and they said, we're going to come back and do a piece. And what I never realised was at the end of it, they said, we now have to, there's a cameraman, there's a photographer here, he has to take a photo. I went, oh, let him carry on. And they went, no, you have to be in it. And I went, no. And I said, no, if we go to a baker's, we get the baker and his staff. And said, equally, we have to have the character we're speaking.
So you wasn't ready for this?
I wasn't ready for it, and I think it shows in the look.
Well, now, where it mentions here the Old Kent Road, just quickly, really quickly, did you get many customers, or did this pub get many customers that would have also been users of the Thomas à Becket?
Yes, definitely.
Fans or mainly fighters?
Well, my brother used to help write for Boxing News, and he's got a very good friend called Mike Costello, who used to work for the BBC and used to do the Olympics, and he then went to Sky, and he's now retired. And my brother used to follow boxing an awful lot, and he quotes a story where he was in York Hall in the East End watching a fight, and my brother had never been a boxer, and this guy came up, obviously a bit punchy, nose, cauliflower, and he went, hello mate, you were robbed when I saw you in that fight.
You mistook him for someone else.
Mike went, thanks. He went, no, you should never have lost it. And they said, there we are. But we used to get people, Bum Bum Minter was here, and also we've got a lovely picture of, just a moment, I'll just get it. Oh gosh.
Yep, please do.
My brother used to go to America quite a lot, and we got contacted by a friend of ours, Joe, who lives around the corner, and he said, I have someone that I fought in the stable of Dave Boy Green. He was called the Fen Tiger. He fought Sugar Ray Leonard, and he had his book signing here, and he was such a genuine guy. He sat with my mother, or our mother, in the evening, and we thought he was doing it basically to make us feel good because he was having a book signing, but he didn't. He was getting annoyed with people asking for books to be signed because he was having such a good conversation with our mother, and our mum said, "Oh, he's such a." I can't imagine him hitting anyone. And he was telling my brother, he said, when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard, and he was a really tenacious boxer, my brother told me. He was like a British champion. When he fought, he said he'd never been hurt so much by Sugar Ray Leonard. Every punch was like pistons hitting him. He hurt him all the time. But that's one of the characters that came in the pub. And lovely guy. And once again, that brought a whole new group of people coming into the pub. But yeah, we to talk about the Old Kent Road, we used to get this was like the jump off place for the Old Kent Road, and I think it was a different type of trade in the main. But this was the sort of place where people would have a drink before heading on.
Do you think when the Thomas à Becket died, that was the end of Old Kent Road?
I think so, and further down you had the Kentish Drove, as a friend of ours, had that Keith Holding.
The Lord Nelson's under risk at the minute.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, she's been there a number of years.
I won't say why, because they might not like me to,
No.
they're in a bit of bother at the minute.
Well, I hope that they get through it, because it would be really sad, because then you're talking about right down the other end having a pub. And that's awful when you think there was 50, if you look on Tweedy's pub, 52 pubs were in the Old Kent Road. And we never realised that there was 3 bottle houses at the top of the road years ago. And it was only when he informed, and we were chatting to John Tweedy, that didn't even realise that facing the flyover, originally it was bar or pubs, not pubs, but drinking houses that didn't have spirits. So
we got that video out first, didn't we, Ben?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Oh, right.
Someone like yourself to be associated. 'Cause I know I went off topic by asking about the Old Kent Road.
Yeah.
But it's actually famous worldwide.
Yes.
So, you know, Muhammad Ali, Frank Bruno.
Yes.
You know, big names boxed there. So it's almost like your own little bit of Hollywood,
Yeah.
if you like. And would you say you reckon you probably met a lot of the people that were not the people that came in to train and buggered off, as in anyone that trained there long term, you probably would have seen in here or somewhere like this. And we're talking about the dockers,
Yeah.
the lightmen.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough. Bermondsey was known as a very fair but tough place, and naturally so, because they had hard lives. You know, suddenly you're talking about discovering a pineapple and think someone from the dockers bringing a pineapple home, and they were lucky to get a hand of bananas and things like that. And it's all things that are being told to us. You know, I spoke to an elderly woman, and she was telling me she was on her way between Croydon and Brighton, and their train got strafed during the war. And she said, all I know was my dad said to me, if anything happens, put cushions and everything around you. Said, luckily no one was killed on the train. But to actually speak to someone that was talking about either German, you know, Messerschmitt or a fighter bomber, whatever, coming down a Heinkel and strafing the actual. When we think of Croydon now as a shopping centre, we think of Brighton as a resort, and to think between there, this, as she was a young girl, she was an elderly woman, which she was telling me, but that bit of history, you'll talk to someone that's experienced something that you're hearing about, and that's why it's so important, these sort of things, live in history, talking to people that can actually tell you something that's not written down. It seems resonant. It's really important to hear something and know that person is saying it with heart and feeling and experience it, and then you're brought in as part of it.
And there's that English grit, isn't there, where many people will explain something and they almost downplay it, and you're saying, could you say that again? Because they say it so calmly. I tell this story often, that there was some English in North Korea and they was getting heavily bogged down, and they rang over to the Americans and said, we're in a bit of a sticky situation. So the Americans left them to die, because in their eyes a sticky situation isn't a problem. What they want to hear is, we need help, we need help. There was this English mentality of, oh well, pip pip, tally ho, here I lie, you know, one of those things. And people could go through absolute hell and explain it in the most.
We've got a friend called Steve Collingwood, and he used to do a bit of DJing for us. And he's got two lovely children. When they were very young, our father was in the Coldstream Guards, and his father was a donkey walloper. He was in the household cavalry, right? So there's quite a bit of fun we have with that. And he used to take the children up about 5 o'clock in the morning to Horse Guards Parade, when all the veterans form up before they march out towards the cenotaph. And he used to take flasks of whiskey, tea and coffee laced with whiskey and rum, and he used to give them to the veterans. And they used to tell little stories, whether they were a submariner or in the RAF or in the army. And he wanted, and the stories that he said, I wanted them to understand what they had done, and the little snippets. And he said, Pat, I was overawed by some of the stories, by these very old men and what they'd experienced, and I wanted my children to have some kind of idea and to give something back by just giving them a little drop of tea laced with whiskey or coffee. Was a little thank you on such a very cold morning. And I thought that, so that's why recently, well, in the last few years, I've started doing a Coldstreamers Day for my father's regiment. I never did anything like that when my dad was alive, but we used to go to Wellington Barracks. My dad served for 22 years, and we had a load of ex-RSMs in here, and they're absolute gentlemen. And to think that when they were on the square, they'd be shouting at 750 men, and people would be quaking in their boots. All I saw was such genuine warmth, and it was just something to give back to the lads that have served and are still serving. And so that's why we do
so
a buffet.
heartbreaking that today people record things on their phones that don't matter. But when we needed to record these people's stories,
I know.
they weren't there.
I know.
And now they're all gone, and now people are busy recording something that doesn't matter, talking about a new shop or something. And we've got all this technology for what?
Yeah.
And these people were the real deal. They were the governors. They were the people. They did things that are just unimaginable. And I fear that my generation, maybe even a generation after me, are the last people that actually appreciate and emotionally attach to it.
I think you're right, and I think that is why a pub, people talk about experiences, and it's only because you're next to them. And that's why, as you say, about being by the bar is a great leveller. If you want to talk to someone's near you and they want to talk, then they'll talk. If they don't, but when you're sitting at a table, there's automatically a bit of a distance.
Well, let me stop you there. I often say, whether it's a tour, sometimes I give tours or whatever, I say that Britain is unlike, only Holland I can think at the top of my head, which is similar to us. We have a standing culture, a standing drinking culture, and that enables us to talk more, yes, fight more, but we're elbow to elbow. Whereas in France and places, they tend to sit on tables. A bit more antisocial, if you like. You're not going to be able to earwig at what they're saying. Whereas you could be someone from a higher class system could hear or be overheard saying something interesting that this person wants to take part in. And he says, "Oh, I know about that." And I think the standing culture in Britain made us both more close and tougher. Because of the propensity for violence. But I think that most people don't realise how important the standing culture of drinking is. And as soon as you sit us all down, it just becomes another restaurant.
I think you're right. I have to tell you, one of the things that I thought was so important here in the early years when we first took the pub was I watched Nationwide, the early evening programme, and they were looking at a train that used to go out of Victoria to, I think it was Crowborough or Chichester, and they were all on the train, and it was a bit like what was the comedy where he just has had a Sunshine Desserts. He gets fed up with being on the train every day, and he decides just to quit the rat race. Well, this person was Reggie Perrin, right? The Life and Times of Reggie Perrin, and the rise and fall of Reggie Perrin. What happened was, on this train, a couple of people got together and realised that every time they're on the train, they're spending an hour and 40 minutes or so of dead time. There was no phones in those days, so people are on books and things like that, reading books. But what they did was they said they decided to start talking to people. And as they were talking to people, they got to know each other. And as they walked down, there'd be a guy, he was the CEO of a massive company, playing chess with a young clerk who always beat him, and they became friends. Well, they weren't working in the same firm, and they used to do out the buffet bar and find out that each night or every other day there was someone on the train that was a regular, his birthday, or and they would do it up and they'd all celebrate, and it became a community on the train.
Different world.
And they said, what about people that just jump on the train because they want to go from A to B, and they go, well, if they want to enter into it, they can. And I thought very much about the pub here at lunchtime, so I started introducing people who were printers, talking to people who had completely diverse professions, and they got talking, and it eventually meant that people started meeting here at lunchtime to have a drink and have a chat and talk about something completely different. So it created a whole new society at lunchtime where it really was not happening.
Well, how many people years ago, I can think of one still now, that their work depended on pubs. They were meeting someone in the pub. So I know someone, he's a builder.
Yeah.
He lives in a village, and a lot of the time, people will say to him in the pub, can you do this or this for me?
Yeah.
Now it's all internet and stuff like that.
It was on a handshake. You're exactly right. In the pub, I saw so many deals being done, and it was on a handshake. There was no emails.
And these are life-changing deals as well.
Yes.
You know, oh, you're going to give me some work. I can feed my kids.
Yeah.
You know, these are big decisions. Nowadays, it's all, I've sent this email, I'm waiting for a reply.
Yeah.
I've got to go to my third interview, as opposed to someone looks you in the eyes, sees you're worth it. Okay, I'll give you a few weeks' work. It turns into a few years' work.
No, that's right. So
And people also learn to be real people by looking you in the eye, dealing with you, as opposed to...
You can weigh someone up.
That's right. But nowadays, when people go to an interview, they have to psych themselves up. You know, they don't know how to do it because the social etiquette isn't there anymore.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true.